Speaker.
Meka Whaitari.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Tēnā tātou katoa te wharenei. Mr. Speaker, it gives me my honour to get up and take a call on the Animal Welfare Amendment Bill. And clearly Labour supports the second reading of this important bill. Animal welfare, Mr. Speaker, is important for its own sake and in preserving the good image of New Zealand as an ethical food producer. Mr. Speaker, the bill attempts to improve and strengthen the animal welfare system in New Zealand, and some will welcome the changes that have been incorporated in this second reading. Some may say that it doesn't go far enough. But Mr. Speaker, 68% of New Zealand householders have at least one pet. I have a pet, a 2.5-year-old long-haired German Shepherd, and some people will say that my welfare and care of her is not of its best, given that I probably only see her one day out of 7. So I do want to acknowledge my dad, who walks her twice a day and feeds her while we're away doing other things. But in all seriousness, Mr. Speaker, each year 50% of our export earnings come from animals and animal products. So our international reputation and marketing brand is absolutely critical. And like my my senior colleague, Damien O'Connor, who touched on it rather eloquently, the importance to make sure that our brand is protected, particularly when we grow our market internationally. So, Mr. Speaker, I too want to acknowledge the members of the Primary Select Committee who are no longer here. Their names have been mentioned. I've myself joined the committee perhaps 1 month before this particular bill was introduced, and I know from both as pet owners and also export owners, the whole challenge in front of us is very vast to ensure that animals, be them pets, be them for export, and no doubt in the way that we treat animals in terms of testing, which has been raised by previous speakers, is something that I take seriously, and I know this House takes seriously. Mr. Speaker, my own history of animal welfare in the commercial space has actually been a product of a sharing family, and seeing sharing and being a rousey in a lot of the sheds up the East Coast, and a lot of the runs were very, very lengthy, like 21 days, and these are the days I'm talking, Mr. Speaker, when you started at 5 a.m. till 5 p.m. They were 9.5-hour days back in those days, and the fatigue with a lot of our shearing sheds, and I remember as a very young person, after like day 10, day 12, the images that I saw of our shearers nicking sheep, and just left me, they were actually quite big nicks. And so blood wasn't unaccustomed, and probably the longer you worked as workers in the shearing sheds to have sheep bleeding, and it raised in me as a very young person the concern. Didn't know it was called animal welfare, but it really affected me, seeing so many sheep bleeding in the pens from that experience. And of course, we've all got stories where, and I'm talking from a commercial point of view, Mr. Speaker, that for a lot of our people up the East Coast, that was our livelihood in terms of the shearing sheds. But the point around looking after our animals set me that it was important that, one, obviously they can't talk for themselves, but in a market where the wool and animal welfare was important back in there, I too want to ensure that that we have a good system, a very good system, and this bill, given that it has gone to Select Committee and the number of submissions that have come back with, like I agree with the Minister, a balanced view to ensure that we are protecting our reputation as a marketer of animals and animal products. But Mr. Speaker, what I do want to take us down and looking at the earlier contributions from our Labour colleagues. Of course, now that you're in the seat, Mr. Speaker, was actually looking at your reference, and that was around the animal testing in terms of psychiatric drugs. And I too want to add my weight that, and I acknowledge what the Minister has said around ensuring that we are not just putting animal to the testing when it comes to products, but I do want to support that we need to really ensure that we keep a very close watchful eye on that place so that animals aren't subjected to not just psychiatric testing for psychiatric testing of drugs, but also cosmetics, as has been earlier mentioned, that we explore and I do acknowledge what the Minister said, all other non-living alternatives before we subject animals to any of that kind of testing. So I want to put my support in ensuring that we make sure that the testings before we allow animals to be subjected to testing is robust to ensure that we protect animals in that sense, Mr. Speaker. And so I want to acknowledge the work that you did, Mr. Speaker, in terms of raising that through your Facebook that got over 4,000 hits in terms of animal testing, and I want to acknowledge you for that and for the Select Committee and taking that on board in terms of the amendments that have been made. Mr. Speaker, the other contribution from this side of the House raised by Mr. O'Connell was around the lack of funding to monitor the changes in this bill in terms of the role of the Ministry of Primary Industry. And so I know there was an issue in the first reading of this bill around the ability for the Ministry of Primary Industry to do their job in monitoring and upholding the regulations that this bill is hoping to present. So to the Minister who has introduced this bill for a second time, I'm hoping that adequate funding is going towards the Ministry to ensure that the monitoring and the upkeep of this bill will be maintained. Mr. Speaker, Labour obviously wants to continue to encourage and work with all our New Zealand farm producing groups to ensure that they take leadership on issues of animal welfare and that they are in the forefront of instituting appropriate animal welfare standards. We also continue to encourage labelling like my colleague Damien has already mentioned for animal products that create a commercial incentive for improved animal welfare standards. We will continue to introduce new codes in areas and for animals where this is appropriate. Further, Mr. Speaker, Labour supports the notion of a universal declaration on animal welfare. The declaration aims to achieve global consideration of the welfare of sentient animals and recognition of animal welfare as an issue of importance as part of the social development of nations worldwide. We have a concern about the ability for regulations to allow mistreatment to continue past the commencement of this bill through regulations. Mr. Speaker, we welcome the Select Committee's change to close the loophole that would have allowed near perpetual extensions to one which allows a maximum of one extension of 5 years after the original 10-year period. There still could be more caution around these regulations, however. So, Mr. Speaker, we, Labour, again, support this reading. We think on balance it has been well crafted. We look forward to the committee stage of it being discussed in the House, and I commend this bill to the House. Kia ora tātou.